Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 23 of Betting the W. It is just me today. Solo pod from me. Damon and Cait are off to Toronto for the WNBA Canada Game. They're going to be making some excellent content while they are there. Unfortunately, your boy doesn't have a passport yet. Working on it. But no leaving the country for me this weekend. I am right here where I usually am on American soil, and there's nowhere else I'd rather be this weekend because this is the only country where the NCAA softball and lacrosse postseasons are taking place, and man, things are heating up. You know I want to get into the bracket. Lacrosse is underway as of this recording. Games will be getting into it tonight, all throughout the weekend, but I want to start with softball because there has been some action this week already. Starting in the SEC tournament, last night we had some unbelievable finishes, some really close games, and the headliner out of the SEC tournament is that South Carolina upsets number 7 Georgia in 8 innings. South Carolina was a 10 seed in the tournament. Georgia, I believe, the 2. This is a huge upset for the Cox. They rolled to this win, and it was behind excellent pitching. Georgia only plated 1 run. It was a 2-1 win for South Carolina. And South Carolina looks like they may be a legit contender in the SEC. We had Bailey Bettenbaugh, who was an unbelievable pitcher for the Gamecocks, taking down Georgia. That is a big win for them. Throughout the rest of the bracket, Auburn with a tough, tight win over Ole Miss, 8-7. And last night, if you stayed up late enough to watch it, Alabama beat Arkansas in 9 innings. That was a long game. Wasn't sure how it was going to go. Montana Fouts was dealing while she was in the game, had Bama up 1-0, and then Arkansas came back to tie it. Montana got injured, hurt her leg, which is the absolute worst sight that you can have as a Tide fan because she's been carrying lately. Bama did go on to survive in extra innings. They take out Arkansas. But this is not going to be an easy rest of the tournament for Bama if they do not have Montana Fouts. I mean, they go as she goes. She is that team. She's an excellent pitcher, one of the best there is. Threw a perfect game earlier this week for the 4th or 5th time in her career, something like that. Helps them take down Arkansas last night, but gets injured in the process. So Tide fans monitoring closely that injury report to see if Montana Fouts will be ready to go. Speaking of excellent pitching out of the SEC this morning, or this afternoon, we had Tennessee taking down Florida in a shutout, 4-0. Ashley Rogers, one of the best pitchers, maybe the best pitcher in the country. Tennessee has looked a little unbeatable as of late. They've only stumbled once or twice, and they take down Florida to advance. So now we have semifinals set with South Carolina facing Auburn today at 4. And then later today, we have Bama facing Tennessee. So we will see how those pitching matchups shake out. If Montana's good to go, that's going to be probably the best pitcher in the SEC versus the second best pitcher in the SEC. Won't rank them for you, but that's top 2 right there. And then South Carolina, keeping the dream alive, heading up against Auburn. So the SEC is getting close to the end there. We got out of the Pac-12, we had a little drama last night. We had 4-seed Stanford taking on 5-seed Oregon. Stanford, big scare from the Ducks, but they survive, they advance, they are rewarded with number 1 seed UCLA. That's a tough matchup for anybody. The Bruins are as good as almost anybody in the country. That's going to be a tough road to face, but the winner of that game gets the winner of Utah-Washington. So 4 really good teams still in it out of the Pac-12. Lots to watch there from the West Coast. Otherwise, Oklahoma still rolling in the Big 12 tournament. They faced Iowa State earlier today. Easy 9-0 win. Easy. And Oklahoma State, the struggles continue for the Cowgirls, and it has been a really rough go of it as of late. Just can't seem to find a win when they need one. They lose to Kansas today, 8-7. So Kansas advances, Oklahoma advances, and then we've got Kansas facing Texas later today. And then Oklahoma tomorrow will take on... Who would they take on? Not sure. I'll find that for you. But we kind of think we know how the Big 12 is going to go. But outside of Oklahoma, it's shaky. We're not really sure what to expect the rest of the way. Oklahoma State, kind of a disappointing season in Stillwater. A lot of surprises and not in a good way. The other tournament to keep an eye on is the ACC. Really concerning stuff out of Clemson. That's what catches my eye, is that they needed all of 8 innings and a walk-off on a passed ball last night to defeat UNC 2-1. They're a stacked roster. So much talent there. So many excellent players. Great pitching, great hitting. But when the lights are brightest, they really do not play their best softball, and that's really concerning heading into May. They're down to Duke right now. I don't know if they're going to be able to pull it out against Duke. Duke is a really tight squad. Florida State beat Virginia Tech 9-1 earlier today. It's looking like the Noles are going to continue to roll. We will keep an eye on that as well. Lots of good games going on later today, as I mentioned. Kansas and Texas, Utah, Washington, Stanford, UCLA in the late game. There are going to be a lot of games. And the Big Ten, too. Nobody's really talking about the Big Ten. I certainly haven't talked about the Big Ten too much. Northwestern and Nebraska play tonight, and Minnesota plays Indiana. It's probably looking like it's going to be Minnesota-Northwestern, which will be an exciting finish for sure. So, softball heating up. We're going to get into the Softball World Series pretty soon, which is going to be thrilling because you know how much I love a good postseason tournament. And speaking of all that, we have a bracket. So last week we did not have a bracket. We were looking, it was the last games of conference tournaments. We have a bracket now from Women's WLAX. First game started today, and already there are some big results. Just had Penn and UConn going on behind me. Penn takes that one. We got Michigan up on Central Michigan. That's a rematch from earlier this year. A really good game. Michigan up big right now. And then we've got Loyola Maryland playing Fairfield right now. A lot of big totals. James Madison, 7. Army is 4 right now. That's a closer game than expected, but we kind of figure that the Dukes are going to finish that one out strong. Kind of a lot of blowouts. You can expect that from the first round. Notable teams out of each region. Out of this top left region here, we've got number 1 seed Northwestern, best team in the country at the moment. Will they even be tested? Hard to say. They've got some good teams in their quadrant. I don't know that they have any great teams. The other seeded team, the 8th seed, is Loyola Maryland. Greyhounds have had a good year. I don't think that they're even going to challenge Northwestern. I think Northwestern takes that corner of the bracket pretty easily. And then in the top right quadrant, we've got Syracuse. There are some interesting names here. We've got Johns Hopkins and Maryland. We've got the best of the Baltimore area there. And we've got James Madison. And then 3 mid-majors in UMass, Army, and Drexel that are interesting. Probably won't advance, but they're definitely interesting names. Syracuse has had a rough season. It's not crazy to think that they won't advance to the Final Four. If I had to pick, I'm probably rolling with the Dukes, but maybe Maryland is a surprise team to watch in the tournament here. I don't know that I really trust Syracuse anymore. They were the most consistent team for the entire regular season, and now that we're into the postseason, I don't know. They look kind of shaky. They look kind of unreliable. In the bottom left, we've got Denver, the 5th seed, which I think is pretty low. I think it's surprisingly low for the Pioneers. They're the only undefeated team in the country right now. They haven't lost a game. There's something to be said for that, with a lot of quality wins, too. They take on USC in the battle of the West Coast over there. That's going to be really interesting. USC has a solid team, won the Pac-12. Denver won the Big East. That's going to be a battle out in the mountains. I think that's a really interesting game to watch. So keep an eye on Denver, USC. And then the other seeded team in that corner is North Carolina. UNC is built for the postseason. As much as I do think Denver is underrated, I will be surprised if Denver or any other team is able to take this quadrant away from UNC. I think we're going to see the Tar Heels at the Final Four in their home state of Carolina. I don't think they're going to be challenged. That will be an interesting quadrant to watch, though. And then in the bottom right, we've got some scrappy teams. No one had a bye here. We've got 6 seed Florida playing Jacksonville tonight rather. That's an interesting in-state rivalry there. Penn just defeated UConn, as I mentioned. And then Mercer and Notre Dame are the other teams in that quadrant. I think this is probably Florida's quadrant, but if there's anything weird that's going to happen here, it's definitely going to come out of this corner of the bracket. And why am I missing? There's a game missing on here, on the NCAA website. I'm not sure what that missing game is, who Penn will face, but regardless, that's going to be a really interesting quadrant to watch just because Florida didn't super jump out to me during the regular season. They earned that 6th seed, though, so they'll be a tough team to take down. It'll be interesting to see how their matchup with likely Notre Dame goes in the second round. And then, Boston College is in that quadrant. So that was the game that was missing here. BC, the 3 seed in the overall tournament. We expect them to advance to face Penn, and then I think they could probably take down Florida out of that corner. Expecting to see BC in the Final Four for sure. So looking at, from my bracket, BC, maybe James Madison, maybe Maryland out of the Syracuse corner, definitely Northwestern, and then UNC showing up once again. This is how it tends to shake out in lacrosse, is that the blue bloods really show up at the end of the season. So I think we're going to get some familiar faces in the Final Four and Carey. It's going to be a great few games regardless of who's there. So I'm excited to watch more games later today. The rest of this tournament is going to be thrilling. We've got tons of softball going on. And then on next week's episode, you can get excited. We're going to talk some WNBA. So of course, Damon's been keeping up with the preseason. There's too much playoffs going on for me to be keeping up with preseason basketball. But we will have some picks for WNBA games. And there are some futures now on DraftKings. If you liked our futures picks from last week, go sprinkle some money and check out a reel that I made on TikTok as well about some of my favorite futures picks on our social medias. No picks because the rest of the squad isn't here, but you can't go wrong with any of these games. I love the matchups that we're seeing on the board here. So go out, have a great weekend, watch some women's sports, connect with us on social media, and we will see you next week.